Hello and welcome to my latest video. So in this video we're going to be taking a look at the Marines from the new LegionsImperialis game, and the reason for that is a few people have pointed out that there are some kind of deformities on the models. Now you have to bear in mind these models are going to be used 5 to a base. They're tiny. They're I think someone measured them, they're about 9mm tall, each Marine is. That's from the foot to the top of his backpack. And you know, when you have them all on the base and you're playing with them, you probably aren't going to notice these issues too much. But if you're like me and you are kind of very particular about how your models look, then you may want to spend a bit of time cleaning them up. So this isn't like, I'm not excusing how Games Workshop have created them, and maybe they could have picked slightly different poses or whatever that wouldn't have been so visible with these like extra bits of plastic. But for me anyway, like, I do like the more dynamic poses and things. It just means it's going to be a little bit of extra work. So here you can see the before on the left, and after I've had a quick go at cutting off the excess plastic. So it's not a perfect job, and also I've obviously painted it and given it a coat of contrast wash at this stage, so it's not finished yet, but you can kind of like roughly see how it's going to look. And I think just cutting it off roughly and softening it down a little bit makes a huge difference. And once that's painted, and you can spend a bit of time painting these actually, the detail is pretty good. But once they're all painted up, then you know they'll fit in quite well. And I mean, it really is up to you, because you're going to need a lot of these for gaming with. So I imagine the vast majority of people won't bother doing this, but like I said, just for cutting off the excess kind of like plastic and making them look a bit neater and tidier, then this is how it's going to be done. And you can see here, so I've already done as well on the Praetor. He's quite a cool model anyway, and I've been a bit picky by cutting off the excess on him, because unless you're like looking really closely, and you can actually kind of paint it to sort of blend in anyway. So he's not like one of the major issues. It's just I didn't like that little bit there where the back of the sword touches the cloak, where it's stretched in a little bit there. But a lot of the excess plastic that you see on these, if you'll notice, you have to turn them kind of like upside down. It's only this guy here that you can see the top angle really, but you know, most of them you're looking underneath upwards, and you'll never see that when the models are stuck on the base. In fact, you won't be able to see it because the base will block it from that angle. You know, maybe for this guy, and I think that there's about 5 of these on the sprue. I might be wrong on that, but there's not that many anyway. And if you want to kind of like mix and match the models a little bit, because there are spare Marines on the sprue because of sergeants and veterans and things, you know, excess models, so that you can swap out depending on what you're doing with them. So if you, for example, just wanted to have for every 5 Marines, one of them be a veteran or a sergeant, you can actually get away with missing out on using most of this particular model anyway. So it's really not quite as bad as a lot of people are making out for the issue. But at the same time, like, if you want to use this model, then this is how I fixed it. And you will need a scalpel. So, and these are very tiny. You have to be delicate with how you're doing this. Now, as I already mentioned, if you're used to using 28mm model, like normal Space Marines, we'll say, for Warhammer 40,000 or the Horus Heresy 30k Marines, you have to tidy them up when you build them anyway. So there is always a certain amount of cleanup expected on plastic. It's just usually you don't think that you're going to have to chop off this extra stuff, but it's not like it's completely, like I say, alien to have to do a little bit of work on them. And the thing is, with the excess plastic, the actual sculpt is still there. If you just follow the lines of what's on there, so if you look on the shoulder pad, you cut down following the angle of the shoulder pad, you get the bolter and you cut like a straight line down and just hack it out like a wedge of cheese, and just cut it away and then clean it up a little bit. You don't even have to be that clean, because after this is done, I'm going to be using some Tamiya extra thin glue, and you just run that over it and it softens everything down. and smooths it. So if you just like kind of cut the excess off that you want, and you don't even have to spend as much time as I am here. You know, if you just cut out that wedge and just have it a very, very sharp, clean cut, and it doesn't really follow much in the way of the shape of the model. Apart from that, it still looks significantly better than having that very harsh kind of block that goes from the back of the gun to the shoulder pad. And I think that is actually the biggest issue, is that it looks so different from the rest of the model, because the rest of the model has lots of curves on it and details and things, whereas that kind of section of a cube there that just fills that whole area, it looks so different from the rest of the Marine, it's very obvious. So just by cutting that out and really not paying that much attention to anything else, you know, especially for gaming, you will never notice that there was that kind of issue with the model to begin with. Now, I'm sure a lot of people will complain saying you shouldn't need to do this anyway, but I'm not commenting on that. I'm just showing you like a way that you can deal with the issue if you want to. Like, you don't have to, but also remember that if you are going to do it, there's going to be a reasonable number of these that you have to get through so that they all match. It's not really worth it if you're just going to do one or two of them and then you know, just leave the rest of the base looking like, you know, this guy. Or maybe what you should do is, as I mentioned earlier, do a bit of the mix and matching. So stick in the odd extra veteran or whatever that has been left over from extra command groups, or, you know, the extra sergeant or whatever. Is, you know, just swap these out, and then if there are any left over of this guy, then you can trim him off. So you, like a combination of the two options should get you through, so that none of your Marines look like they've got that extra block on their shoulder. The work that I'm doing here is really kind of beyond necessary, because like you can't see this. You know, when the model is stuck to the base, you really can't see these extra bits. If you just focus on the you know, that block on the corner. I'm just doing this just to show that you can. Like, if you're someone like me who's just very particular about the way that your models look, and you want to, even if you can't see it, say the sort of person that will paint the interior of a vehicle, or like the interior of a Titan cockpit or something like that, then you're probably the kind of person that will do this. And there is an element of skill required, and also you have to be very careful because you need a sharp blade, and it's a very tiny model, so it's small movements that you're cutting away with. And if you're not careful, you might cut your finger. The only thing is, because it should be a sharp blade and you're doing very small models, you shouldn't have to put any pressure down. So if you slip a little bit, it's only a tiny movement that you slip. Don't be putting your whole shoulder behind cutting into this tiny Marine, because you'll have a catastrophe pretty much, and a trip to A&E. So this here is kind of like the magic that fixes the mess that you've just made. So this is Tamiya Extra Thin. I think that there are other brands of glue as well that, you know, do the same thing. It's just kind of like polystyrene cement, but it's like, you know, very runny. And you run that over the model for the sections that you've cut, and it will just soften anything, so you won't see the cuts that have been made. The detail might not be quite as high as the other sculpted parts on the model, but that doesn't matter. You're just going to leave those as like shaded in, like, or darker sections when you paint it. And you can still, like, if you want, and you're going to spend a bit of time painting some of the highlights, and you'll see at the end of the video where I show a photo of the Praetor and this Marine here, actually one of these guys. You can see, like, they're quite easy to highlight still. The big bold elements on the shoulder pads and the legs and things, they're very easy to pick out, and even if the detail isn't there, you can sort of quite easily sort of block in a little highlight and leave a section darker, and it'll look like the detail's there anyway. It all matches up. This, by the way, is the other guy that a few people have complained about. He's not as bad as the other one, and I really like him because of his pose. It is nice that Games Workshop have put these more dynamic poses in, and I mean, you can see that really if you look at the Assault Marines. Those are all really, really good. They've got dynamic poses and things, but it's mainly because they have separate weapons in each hand, so they can, they don't have parts behind them. Like the issue is when you have like elements of the model that are further forward and they kind of block in front of another part. So if you say like have a gun that or an arm that goes forward in front of, say, the chest, everything in between the gun and the chest is filled in with plastic. You can't fill in, you can't leave that section empty when it's a one-piece sculpt, or rather you can, but it's really expensive and more complicated. So this is this is what you get. Whereas when you look at the assault marines, like they could have maybe done the odd marine where he's holding the gun in one hand and he's got he's got his other hand down by his side or something like that. There are definitely ways that Games Workshop could have incorporated other poses, but the poses have to be like kind of a little bit flatter. You can't have really things that are aiming more forward and more back, and that's why also when you look at, say, the Praetor, he's more of like a flat pose, so there's not that much that you see that is wrong with him. But of course he has his cloak, so the section where the sword is a little bit further forward than the cloak, so it's that section in between that gets filled in as well. This was the other guy that people complain about. I don't think he's that bad really, but there is the section that I've just cut off here between the front of the leg and where it curves up. You're following that same kind of bit there as the back between the magazine on the gun and the center of the marine. It's just a void that's been filled. But that section that was from the leg to the gun, and it also touches a little bit on the forward hand as well. It does kind of look like Chaos has distorted the model, because it's got that very warped look. So a few of the 40k demons and things have that kind of look to them, that sort of stretched look, but it's actually sculpted on. Whereas in this, it's just a byproduct of the molding process. But if you were doing this as, say, like a traitor marine, and it's later on in the heresy, you could just paint that as part of like a chaotic element that's on the model, and you can definitely get away with doing that. But it's not that tricky to cut off. Actually, the hardest part on this model to fix, and it's part that nobody's really complained about that much, is the gap in between the legs, or rather the lack of gap. So you can see where it should be between his thighs, that should be empty, and there should be like a distinct groin pad there. It took me literally 20 seconds to cut the section out. I don't show it in the video because it's really hard to hold the model and get the angle to do it. So basically you can't see anything, but you'll see in a moment when I cut to it. There you go. So I just very quickly just nicked off that little extra bit. It looks very messy. You've filled the area with the Tamiya extra thin cement again, and it softens it all down. Like, not a perfect job, but it looks a lot cleaner. And don't forget that this video is really heavily zoomed in. You will not see the models this large when you're gaming with them. So here we can see the Praetor and that guy there that I just showed you that I was cleaning up, and after they've been painted. Now, I don't expect most people will spend this long on any of the Marines in the box, because it's just not worth it. They're going to die. But I do think it's kind of interesting that if you just want to spend a little bit of time on them, how nice they actually look, just to show the detail is all sculpted. That they are really nice models, and you can just push them that little bit more by taking off that excess plastic. So I hope you enjoyed the video. You found something interesting anyway. Like I said, I'm sure there are a few people that are going to be complaining, but really I've just I've tried my best to show ways to fix issues for people that really want the models and just aren't quite happy with the finish on some of them. But anyway, that's the end of the video. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.